Any theories as to what their intentions might be?
Well, there's a whole range of theories. I mean, it could be simply as like when we're on the African Serengeti, we see the wildebeest, we're in a helicopter, to make fun of it, we sit there and say, oh, that one retarded little, what do we do? And the helicopter will come out, we draw blood, we test, we want to see its diet, its migratory patterns, its health, and then what happens? The wildebeest wakes up, kind of groggy, disoriented, stumbles over to the water hole. He's like, hey, Bill, you're not going to believe this. This thing came out of the sky. All some weird stuff happened. I'm like, gosh, I woke up and now my butt hurts. Right? It could be something as simple as that.
Really big those reports because people do say that they were abducted by aliens.
Well, this is my point. Right? So, that's one option. The other option would be simply to monitor us. It could be that we are getting very close to being able to replicate what they can do. And if that's the case, maybe technologically we're only 100, 200 years behind. And if that's the case, now all of a sudden we're going to be the neighbors, right? And
come on.
Species is very violent. We can have fish with each other. Are we really ready to go out and eat our potential friends from out of town? I don't know. I mean, we're pretty horrible to each other, so maybe not. Certainly, I would then, right? We're getting close. That would probably be pretty interesting what we're doing too. As far as the abductions, I don't know what to tell you because I've never been abducted. I've had some people that swear by it, but you can't have a conversation about abduction and say, "Oh, you're for peaceful business." It doesn't work that way.
Do you believe them? The people that swear by it?
I believe that they are being truthful. That experience they feel is real. I don't think they're lying. But the question is,
did it happen? Is the question.
Yeah, and I can't say because I wasn't there. But I can tell you that we definitely have people that have had experiences when they're on U.S. government medical disability in Oregon because we got too close to an UAP. That wasn't deliberate. I think that it triggered was just a byproduct of the technology. They got too close to it.
Does that mean they got too close to it? And you mentioned that there's some people that are on U.S. disability allowance, so they're being paid by U.S. government.
Right, because of they had a UAP account. They were involved in a UAP account.
And what does that mean, UAP accounts in that definition?
Well, so let's look at it this way. Here's a better one. You go to the airport, right? And I'm going to hop on a 737, fly from Fort Lauderdale. There's a real threat there. I'm getting on a plane, it's safe, have a seat, have a cocktail, watch a movie, read a magazine. Now, if I were to walk out onto the tarmac, onto the runway of that same, where that same airplane is, and that airplane decides to spool up its jet engine, chances are I'm going to be injured. I'm going to get burned, I'm going to lose my hearing, and possibly a lot worse, right? There are individuals, U.S. government servicemen and women, and there's also intelligence officials who have been injured by getting too close to a UAP, whether incidentally or it was deliberate or not. The question is, was that injury sustained because it was deliberate, or was that injury sustained because it was just a matter of being too close to the technology? For example, instead of putting your head near a microwave oven when it's on, it's probably not very good for you, right?
Have those people spoken out?
Absolutely.
What's like a good example?
There's an individual right now named John Burroughs who had his medical files classified, and the U.S. government, thankfully, because of lead Senator John McCain from Arizona, forced the Air Force to release his files. And as a result, he was able to get full medical disability because of an incident that involved him and another individual in the UK, known as Rendlesham Forest incident or Bentwaters incident, where there was a joint U.S. and UK base, and there was a UFO incident where this thing had landed in the forest. And they went out to go see this thing, and they were injured.
And they were in the military at the time?
Yeah, Air Force Special Police or police officers.
They were injured.
They were injured, and that's not all. There's a lot of people that have been injured right now that are under medical care by government doctors. That is a fact.
When they give their account of what happened, what do they say?
Depends who you ask. I mean, there's some consistency within some of the stories, and then there's some divergence. It's like somebody who says, I'm in a car accident, depending on what kind of car you're in, was it a multiple car pileup, and where were you sitting in the car, you can have a slight experience, so it's not one shoe fits all.
You talk about how there's been a lot of UAP sightings and nuclear technology facilities.
Yes, that is why this is a national security issue, because they seem to be able to disable capabilities. Now people say, oh, well, that's, taking that.
Oh, come on.
Well, maybe, but in Russia, there's information that suggests they actually turned them on. So, we have to be careful that our nuclear triad capability is really the crown jewels of the U.S. government. And so if a country or an adversary has the ability to interfere with the nuclear response, that's significant.
There's evidence to suggest that they turned on the nuclear facilities in Russia.
Yes.
What is that evidence? What is that?
There's evidence, and there's actually a KGB report that suggests that one of their devices actually turned on. In fact, there's a lot of, you careful what I say here. So after the Berlin Wall fell, there was this brief honeymoon period between the Soviet Union and the US. Ex-KGB officers were sharing information with us and our government. I think that's about all I can really say about that. But there was some very interesting information that we were able to see.
I was reading about this really interesting incident called the Polaris incident.
Polaris,
I can't pronounce that. So, Polaris, which was in 1977 to 1978. And it sounded like a UAP incident that was witnessed by hundreds, thousands of people.
It was investigated information by the Brazilian military under the command and control of a four-star general named General Choa. And he has explained, before he passed away, that even his own military personnel had been attacked.
Securing Bravo.
By
and what did they say? What did they document?
oh my goodness, a whole litany of things. A lot of the locals call me terrified by the elite leaders, by them almost being like a laser blast, if you can imagine that, or directed energy type injury. Very provocative. Some of the military personnel were injured as well. A lot of medical doctors came in afterwards to look at the locals and the military personnel, validating the presumption that there was some sort of directed energy type damage, tissue damage to some of these people. And of course, then the fear kind of escalated into some of the other, local wars, other things. But it was very well established by the Brazilian military, who also witnessed these encounters. So it's not like just some people in a remote village. These were Brazilian military officers who also vouched for it. I've seen dozens and dozens of military officers all throughout Latin America, Chile, Peru, Uruguay, and they all reporting in some cases very, very similar encounters. Not necessarily with Polaris, but innocent amongst themselves, people who don't even know each other, separated by different countries, are telling me there's encounters and the same morphology of craft, and how they would in some cases try to engage in a dogfight with cannons, conventional guns, to no avail, of course. And there's reports of that in Tehran incident, which was 1978, the Tehran incident with the F-14 Tomcat, where the pilot, his aircraft was disabled every time he tried to engage the target. And then, I superpose that with here in Huntsville, Alabama, we have some helicopters that we were testing, and something like 8 out of the 8 test pilots already reported UAP coming around their helicopter while they were testing it. And one even reported that his helicopter was disabled, and he went into an emergency situation, I think an emergency auto rotation situation. As soon as the UAP left, he was able to regain control of his helicopter.
Should we be worried about this?
No, I don't think we're worried. I think we should be concerned. Because look, from a governmental perspective, to determine this, that's why I always say this is a national security issue, but not a national security threat. And there's a reason why. So there's a very simple calculus to determine if something is a threat to capabilities versus intent. We've seen some of the capabilities. We have no idea. So we don't know if it's a threat. And let me give you a little analogy here that might help kind of put this. I use this analogy a lot to help illustrate what do I mean. I'm sure you're looking about to help. Let me ask you a question. Do you lock your front door before you go to bed?
Yes.
And you have I think most people, we don't expect anything bad to happen, but just out of precaution, right? And some folks may go the extra mile and decide, I'm just going to give up with this water once in a while. And how many size 12 money good prints on your living room carpet
Seize the
that were not
objectives.
there.
Like from movies that we've seen, and they have like the big heads and things like that, and maybe like white, tall, skinny, with like the big arms, the big legs and stuff like that. Is that what people in the Pentagon consider aliens to be? What we see in movies?
I can't speak on behalf of other people. I can only speak on behalf of me. I've been very, very careful not to stereotype anybody or anything. I think it's important we have to keep an open mind, because when you say the word aliens, you're automatically presuming that they think you're from outer space. It might not be. There's lots of different options. It doesn't have to be from outer space.
What do you believe? Do you believe they're amongst us?
Well, it doesn't matter. Can I explore this with you? This question, okay? So it's not an either or. So in the beginning of our conversation, I told you I went to the University of Miami, and I studied microbiology, immunology, and studied parasites. Now, if you go to some anthropologists, they will suggest to you that modern human beings, Homo sapiens, has been around roughly 100 to possibly 200,000 years. So on a 24-hour clock, right? It's only the last 2,000 years. And it was the Greeks that proposed that there could be fundamental life forms on this planet. And you were either a plant or you were an animal, and human beings were an animal. And so the 24-hour clock you're talking about, 10 minutes ago, before midnight. Well, it was 300 years ago during the Renaissance or the days of enlightenment that we discovered an entire microbiome that's been here all along. And that was neither plant nor animal, it was more fungus. And we pat ourselves on the shoulders and say, hey, and this 24-hour clock is spinning probably the last maybe 10 seconds, last 120 years, that we discovered for the first time the true dominance alpha life form on this planet. In fact, if you take all the biomass of every plant, and all the biomass of every animal, and all the biomass of every fungus, and added it all together, it still will not equal the biomass of this hidden yet dominant life form that's been on this planet all along. And it wasn't until we could have the technology to curve glass to famously shout the words, little beasties, did we discover the world of microorganisms. Okay? The true dominant life form on this planet that's been here all along. In fact, it's inside of us, it makes us up, it's pervasive everywhere. And we just discovered it. So, when I say to people, Bill, you think from outer space? They can be from outer space, inner space, or frankly, the space in between. These can be just as natural to our environment as we are. Maybe we're at the point now where technologically we can start interacting. Maybe they're from under the ocean. Look, less than 10% of the ocean floor has been mapped. We know more about the surface of the moon than we do of our own oceans. Is it possible these things are just as natural to this planet as we are? Possibly. Or is it possible they think you're from somewhere else? Yes, that's possible too. So we have to keep all options on the table until they're no longer on the table. We live in an infinitely complex universe. See if I can, and I've often used this before to try to help people wrap their heads around this. We perceive life in five fundamental senses. And we can't touch it, taste it, hear it, smell it, etc. We can't interact with it. We have no idea it's there. Where I live out in Wyoming, beautiful night skies, unclouded night skies, and you can see all the heavens, beautiful Milky Way in front of you. If you were to look at that same night sky through a radio telescope, you would see something different. You would see nebula, you would see things that you can't normally perceive in the ultraviolet and infrared spectrum, X-ray. It's there, you just can't perceive it. It's just like if you had cell phone vision, all of a sudden now you can see Wi-Fi and 5G. You can see an entire everything else around you. So we perceive light. We perceive light through a very narrow spectrum of visible light. The visible light spectrum in reality is most everything else kind of lies beyond that. And then you have a scale issue. You have a scalability issue. What do I mean by scalability? We are as human beings, you and I are having a conversation here, somewhere, someplace on this planet, revolving around this here star and this here part of the Milky Way galaxy, which is a supercluster of other galaxies. The visible horizon, any direction you look at, of light, the size of the universe is estimated to be between 13.6 to 13.9 billion light years. Billion. What is a light year? A light year is the distance that a photon of light can travel in the course of a year. And how fast is that? Well, light travels at roughly 186,000 miles per second, or 7.5 times around the planet in 1 second. Really fast. Imagine how far that goes in a year, and now imagine how far that goes 13.9 billion years, right? So we're in the middle of the universe here. Our universal horizon in any direction is 13.9 billion light years. And in that direction, nothing. Actually, roughly 27 billion light years across, and we're in the middle. Now, scientists are estimating that's less than 10% of the actual size of the universe. The universe is actually much, much bigger than that. This is just the universal horizon, the expansion of the universe. Light this far will never reach Earth. So now you're talking about a size 100 billion light years, and as small as we are, right in the middle, this infinitesimally small speck. Keep in mind, in our visible universe alone, there are more stars than there are grains of sand in all the beaches in all the world. Think about that incomprehensible number. And as small as we are, now, humor me with this. Take one atom, one hydrogen atom. Avogadro's number 1 times 10 to the negative 23. Okay, that's roughly the same order of magnitude as we are to the universe. So we have this entire huge universe outside and this entire universe inside every single human being. And we as human beings can only interact with 1 or 2 orders of magnitude up or down. Otherwise, the universe is simply too big or too small. We just will never be able to know. And that is reality. That's where most of everything lies. That's where most reality is. It's either up there or inside or everything in between. So I guess my point is, every time when people say, well, aliens, what does that mean? What does that mean? Because most people say aliens in Hollywood and eggheads running around. There's so much more to it. It doesn't. This is us imposing a Hollywood idea of what an alien should look like. And by the way, let's not forget their anthropomorphic values, right? They look like us, they have arms like us, heads like us, and eyes like us. Because we view everything through anthropomorphic eyes. It's the reason why we call our dogs human beings and we treat them like humans. Because we treat everything as if they have human values, human motivation, human intent. When we may be dealing with something completely different. This could be like artificial intelligence. It's just binary. Input in, input out. We don't know. So these are some of the questions we have to deal with as we're moving down this pathway. This is why I always tell people that all options have to be on the table until they're no longer on the table. We simply don't know.
We also don't know what their intentions are, why they might be here.
That's right.
Why they might be visiting here.
That's right.
Do you have any theories as to what their intentions might be?
Well, there's a whole range of theories. I mean, it could be simply as like when we're on the African Serengeti, we see the wildebeest, we're in a helicopter, and, not to make fun of it, but you sit there and say, oh, now we're retarded, what do? We let the helicopters come out, we draw blood, we do tests, we want to see his diet and his migratory pattern, his health, and then what happens? The wildebeest reaches out, kind of groggy, disoriented, stumbles over to the water, and holds like, this guy, all sorts of weird stuff happen. I was being touched. I woke up and now my blood hurts. Right? It could be something as simple as that.
Do you believe any of those reports? Because people do say that they were abducted by aliens.
Well, this is my point, right? So that's one option. The other option would be simply to monitor us. It could be that we are getting very close to being able to replicate what they can do. And if that's the case, maybe technologically only 100, 200 years behind. And if that's the case, now all of a sudden we're going to be neighbors, right? And that could be problematic because our species is very violent. We do a lot of bad things to each other. Are we really ready to go out and eat our potential friends from out of town? I don't know. I mean, we're pretty horrible to each other, so maybe not. Certainly, if I was them and we were pretty close, I would probably be pretty interested in what we're doing too. As far as the abductions, I don't know what to tell you because I've never been abducted. That has people that swear by it. But, you can't have a conversation about abduction and say, oh, they're here for peaceful reasons. It doesn't work that way.
Do you believe that the people that swear by it?
I believe that they are being truthful, that that experience they feel is real. I don't think they're lying. But the question is,
did it happen is the question.
Yeah, and I can't say because I wasn't there. But I can tell you that we definitely have people that have had experiences are now in the U.S. government with medical disability in warning because they got too close to a UAP. Now, was it deliberate that they got injured, or was it just a byproduct of the technology they got too close to it?
Does that mean they were too close to it? And you mentioned that there's something US disability allowance being paid by the US government.
Right, because they had a UAP, they were involved in a UAP account.
And what does that mean, UAP account, in that definition?
Well, so let's look at it this way. Here's a better. You go to the airport, right, and then hop on a 737 and fly to Fort Lauderdale. There's no real threat there. Getting on a plane is safe. So, a cocktail, watch a movie, read a magazine. Now, if I were to walk out onto the tarmac, onto the runway of that same airplane is, and that airplane decides to spool up its jet engine, chances are I'm going to be injured. It burns, a hearing, possibly a lot worse, right? There are individuals, U.S. government servicemen and women, and there's also intelligence officials who have been injured by getting too close to a UAP, whether incidentally or deliberate or not. The question is, was that injury sustained because it was deliberate, or was that injury sustained because it was just a matter of being too close to the technology? For example, so putting your head near a microwave oven when it's on, it's probably not very good for you, right?
If those people smoking out.
Absolutely.
What's the real example?
There's an individual right now named John Burroughs who had his medical files classified in the U.S. government, thankfully because of Senator John McCain from Arizona forced the Air Force to release his files, and as a result, he was getting pulled out of this because of an incident that involved him and the UK, known as the Randall Forest incident or Ben Waters incident, where there was a U.S. joint U.S. and UK base, and there was a UFO incident where this thing had landed in the forest, and they went out to go see this thing. They were injured.
And they were in the military time.
Yeah, Air Force Special Police officers.
This isn't working. We're behind.
They were injured.
They were injured, and that's not all. There's a lot of people that have been injured right now that are medical care by government doctors. That is a fact.
Hostile spy plane established overhead.
When they get their accountable, how was it?
I mean, there's some consistency within some of the stories, and then there's some divergence. It's like somebody who says they've been in a car accident, depending on what car you're in, was in a multiple car pileup, and where were you sitting in the car? You have like experience. That's not one shoe fits all.
You talk about how there's been a lot of UAP sightings at nuclear technology facilities.
Yes, that is why this is a national security issue, because they seem to be able to say what taking matches out of kids' hands, and it's, well, maybe, but in Russia, there's information that suggests they actually turned them on. So, we have to be really careful that our nuclear triad capability is really the crown jewels of the U.S. government. And so if a country or an adversary has the ability to interfere in response, that's significant.
Is there evidence to suggest that they turned on the nuclear facilities in Russia? What is that? What was that?
There's evidence that there's actually a KGB report that suggests that their places actually turned on. In fact, there's a lot if you go to Sears. So after the nuclear fell, there was this brief honeymoon period between the Soviet Union and the West, where ex-KGB officers were sharing information with us. I think that's about all I can tell you about that. There was information that were
Interesting incident called Polaris incident. Polaris, which was in 1977 to 1978. And it sounded like a UAP incident that was witnessed by hundreds, thousands of people.
It was investigated officially by the Brazilian military under the command and control of a four-star general named General Troa. And he has claimed, before he passed away, that even his own military personnel had been attacked.
And what did they see? What did big documents.
Oh my goodness, a whole litany of things. A lot of the locals called me to verify that they were sued by them, almost being like a laser blast. You can imagine that, or directed energy type injury. Very provocative. Some military personnel were injured. A lot of medical doctors came afterwards to some locals, military personnel, validating the presumption that there was some sort of directed energy type damage to some of these people. And of course, then the fear kind of escalated into some of the other, local wars, other things. But it was very well established by the military, who also witnessed the just people in a remote village. These were Brazilian military officers who also, I spoke to dozens and dozens of military officers all throughout Latin America, Chile, and Peru, and Uruguay, and they all reported in some cases very, very similar encounters. Not necessarily with Coladas, but even amongst themselves, who know each other, separated from their countries, are telling their same encounters and the same morphology of craft, and how they would in some cases try to engage in a dogfight and use cannons, conventional guns, to no avail, of course. And there's reports of that in Tehran incident, which was 1978, the Tehran incident with the F-14 Tomcat, where the pilot, his aircraft was disabled every time he tried to engage the target. And then, I superimposed that with here in Huntsville, Alabama, we had some helicopters that we were testing, and something like 8 out of 8 test pilots all reported UAP coming around their helicopter while they were testing it. And one even reported that his helicopter was disabled, and he went into an emergency situation, an emergency alarmization situation. As soon as the UAP left, he was able to regain control of his helicopter.
Should we be worried about this?
No, I don't think worried. I think we should be concerned, because look, from a governmental perspective, to determine this, and this is why I always say this is a national security issue, but not a national security threat, and there's a reason why. So there's a very simple calculus to determine if something is a threat. It's capabilities versus intent. And we've seen some of the capabilities. We have no idea the intent. So we don't know if it's a threat. And let me give you a little analogy here that might help kind of put this. I use this analogy a lot to help illustrate what I mean. I'm sure you live in a lovely home. Let me ask you a question. Do you lock your front door before you go to bed?
Yes.
Okay. And you know what? I do too. I think most people, we don't expect anything bad to happen, but just out of precaution, right? And some folks may go the extra mile and decide, I'm going to just make sure the windows are locked once in a while. And I don't even turn the alarm on at night because I can. Let's say you wake up one Sunday morning to have yourself a nice hot cup of coffee, walk downstairs, and all of a sudden as you come downstairs one bright morning, you notice size 12 money boot prints on your living room carpet that were not there the night before. Now, nobody's hurt, nothing's out of place, but despite you locking the front door and checking the windows and turning on the alarm, there are now boot prints in your living room floor that were not there the night before. My question to you is that a threat? My response is, it could be. You don't want it to be, so we should probably figure out how it's getting into the house. This is kind of the same analogy. These things that can come in unimpeded, unchallenged to control U.S. airspace versus the military.
Teenagers are building businesses with AI, while the only AI you know is ChatGPT.
It's 2025. AI can build a pro-level website within a couple of minutes. Meanwhile, you're still asking it how to write emails. Seriously, you've got one of the most powerful tools ever invented sitting right in front of you, and you're barely scratching the surface. Tomorrow, we kick off the 28-day AI challenge for beginners over 40. Just 15 minutes a day to level up. In 1 week, you'll feel unstoppable. In 2 weeks, you'll have your strategy. In a month, you'll wonder why you didn't start sooner. Tap the screen to join us.
At Wawa, every handcrafted beverage is made for your moment. You sip into something special. You gotta have a Wawa.
These military installations potentially interfere with our nuclear equities and capabilities. We should probably figure out what these things are.
With everything that you know in mind and everything you've witnessed and seen,
Sending smoke grenade.
If you had to argue against yourself, if you had to argue the case against everything that you believe, to make the case that UAPs don't exist, what exactly would you say?
Well, you can't say they don't exist. We're beyond that. They're real, whatever they are. But I could make the argument that it's foreign adversarial technology. It's Russia, it's China, right? They have leapfrogged us technologically, have been able to actually use this plan wonderfully. And then the other option is that small brand hallucination. So let's go down each argument. Let's go down the fact that maybe this is, I don't know, Chinese technology, Russian technology. After all, the Chinese did send balloons over the northern continental United States, spy balloons, you know, for who knows how long.
Kill the shit out of it.
That means that in the last 70 years, some country has been able to create a technology in secret.
I'll get the fuck out of here.
And, by the way, deploy it over the continental United States for 70 years, completely non-attributed. Now, where were we 70 years ago? Well, we were on the heels of World War II. We had just broken the sound barrier, and we hadn't made it into space yet. Where was China? In the middle of a famine. Where was Russia? No better than we were. So, if this was Chinese technology or Russian technology back then, we have the data to show all of that, this would be the greatest intelligence failure this country has ever faced, eclipsing that of even 9/11, because despite the billions of dollars in the 17 intelligence organizations over 70 years, there's not a trace that these countries were able to do this and fly over our country and do what oversee. So that's option one. Also, temporally speaking, that type of technology didn't exist back in 1948. Not by us anyway. So that would be like going into King Tut's tomb for the very first time in the 1920s and looking in there and all of a sudden discovering a fully assembled functioning 747. Doesn't make sense. Egyptians didn't have the technology back then. So let's go to the other option. So that would be the huge, biggest intelligence failure that this country's ever experienced, and that's not a good option. It's very, very unlikely. So the other option is this is not mass hallucination. Everybody's crazy. So let's go down that rabbit hole for a second. So some of the best and brightest in our intelligence community in our Department of Defense are top-gun trained pilots who are trusted to fly live munitions over cities, populated cities, fighting with war we have. Men and women who have their finger literally on the nuclear button. They're all crazy. They're all absolutely certifiably insane. We've got a bigger problem on our hands.
What percentage of them have made reports of UAP?
You know, it's hard to say percentage because you don't know, because the ones that don't report, there's no way to measure, right? You only know the ones that do report. So there's no way now we can tell you that people more are reporting because they feel it's safe and they can report. But we don't have any metric right now that tells us who's not reporting because they're not reporting.
When we think about this hallucination rationale, I remember many years ago, you know, and I think it was in relation to physical hallucinations or ghosts and things like that. Yeah, it was in relation to ghosts. And someone said to me, they said, if extremely improbable things never happened, then that would be a miracle. Because just like the nature of probability means that most sort of religious things happen most of the time, and then as you get down to probability, there's this one side of it which is highly probable. Yeah, exactly. So like this side of it is extremely improbable things. You know, what's an extremely improbable example? We start talking about Andrew Huberman, and then my phone rings and it's Andrew Huberman, and we go, oh my god, what are the odds of that being Andrew Huberman? We were just talking about him. And the issue there is we spoke about it. On one time it does, we go, okay, the dogs.
Yeah, but then you don't have these 90-degree turns. You don't have 180-degree turns. You don't have something coming in, sitting at 80,000 feet, and dropping right above the surface of the water, 150 feet, and popping right back up again. So you can measure quantifiable, qualifiable data.
Is that referring to what they call the Tic Tac incident? Is that what that is as well?
So the Tic Tac incident that's not the video for the Tic Tac, but yeah, the Tic Tac incident are these objects that were detected. At one point, one of the other operators was raining UFOs. So the spy-1 radar can detect a baseball-sized rocket at 80,000 feet. Okay, so very, very capable. You had E-2 Hawkeye. That's a new platform. It's an aircraft, just a flying radar system that we use to provide air support, and combat control for aircraft. So you have Aegis-class destroyers, basically like a Ticonderoga class. You have the USS Princeton with the spy-1 radar, one of the world's premier at the time radar system on the planet. You have the E-2 Hawkeye also picking it up on radar. Then you have the aircraft that can pick it up on radar. Then you have the eyewitness picking it up on radar. Then you have the footage, the rear footage, picking these things up as well, electronic. So you're talking about something that is at 80,000 feet, that within a blink of an eye has the ability to drop down to 50 feet and go right back up again instantly. And it's all being verified by various sensor systems. Now, this considered is complicated a little bit because the pilot's incident confirmed the Tic Tac, but they didn't see it dropping out of 80,000 feet on its own. I'm kind of putting it all together to make it easier for people to consume. But the Tic Tac incident wasn't really an incident. It was incidents over a protracted period of time.
I'm trying myself.
One incident or multiple incidents, but it's referred to as the Tic Tac incident because the pilots actually reported seeing this white flying, what's been described as the lozenge. That's what's been described historically as a white flying U-2 tank. In this particular case, it was described as a white flying Tic Tac, like Tic Tac.
And they saw it go up, down on radars and systems like that.
Oh yeah, they saw it right up and down on radar systems, and the pilots actually saw this in the way, bang, disappear over the horizon. Only later on, with the being picked up on radar again, 60 miles away at their cap point, where they're supposed to rendezvous next. So you're talking incredible speeds, incredible hypersonic velocity, instantaneous acceleration, all observability, all the anti-gravity, all the observables. And that's just one of the publicly known. There's a lot more of these things that have been happening.
How long were you with this, working on that project at the Pentagon?
8 years.
8 years.
I'm an old guy. This is great. I'm on.
Let's talk about Arsenal really quickly. When I'm on the home stretch of Super October, and this is where I would normally share my secrets. As I haven't drank for over a year now, I returned to here from a listener who's going to alcohol for the first time through this challenge. Earlier this week, Charlie from Manchester sent me this message. The last few weeks of this year has been but I haven't given up drinking for good, which Sober October challenge has shown me just how much my body needs time away from drinking, especially during periods where I really need to perform. I've slept better and I've felt more mental clarity and control each day. Sober October is also your chance to learn more about your body disciplines. If you're not yet a member, go to join.whoop.com/CEO to start your free trial today. Quick one, I want to tell you about a new health product/gadget that's had a big impact on my life, also my partner's life. They are a sponsor of the podcast, and me and my partner are both quite obsessed with it now. It is the On Charge Infrared Sauna Blanket. At the high infrared sauna blanket. Infrared sauna blankets are designed to give you the exact same benefits of infrared saunas that you find in gyms and spas and health clubs. They're portable. You can use them at home, you can use them when you travel, and anywhere in between. It heats the body directly rather than the air range. And for me, when I use the On Charge Infrared Sauna Blanket before I sleep, my sleep scores go up. I'm better recovered the next day when I go to the gym because it helps with circulation and stiffness, muscle soreness, but also infrared is associated with improving your skin. They are a sponsor of this podcast, and because of that, they offered all of you listeners a 25% discount when you try On Charge's infrared sauna blankets today. To get that discount, use the code Diary at checkout. You'll also get free shipping and a year-long warranty. Head to oncharge.com/diary and get started on your infrared sauna journey today. What's like a day in the life of someone working in a project that deals with UFOs type of expert. Come in the morning, give you coffee.
I had to do some work portfolios. I was on positive portfolios. On one hand, I was working
Switching your
the issue, UFO issue. On the other hand, I was also working one-time event. Very politically charged, very tense situation. That was my job, so I had both those portfolios. So every day was like riding a tiger to work, and every day that tiger just wanted to go people off and you just have to hold on for dear life. Yeah, it was stressful. In 2014, I was informed that I was put on the ISIS Al-Qaeda kill list for my work at Guantanamo Bay. And of course, we had the P issue. It was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable times. It was uncomfortable time for me, profession.
Sniper.
I wish to not enjoy it.
Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed the people. I enjoyed the mission and doing what I thought and what I think is right for our nation. But no, I mean, if there was an easier job I could have had, I probably would have done it. But most of my jobs, I tend to be handpicked to do the jobs I had done.
Losing A.
I guess someone thought I was doing a good job of other stuff, and they kind of bumped me to stuff.
How does your work with UFOs and your belief in these other, I was going to say life forms, but just these other forms of, I don't know,
Enemy
activity that we can't explain, because I hesitate on the word life forms, because again,
Yeah, let me say that I believe in possibilities.
okay, right.
I don't know, I can't tell you definitively that, I believe, life it looks like this in other parts of the galaxy. But we have to remain open to the possibilities and look at the data on the data itself and then draw conclusions based upon the data.
Did this understanding make your life more fulfilling or feel more insignificant? Because I sometimes think when I spend time watching space movies and documentaries, and I see them flying to Mars and then through these black holes and stuff, it reminds me how big and vast the universe really is. And all of that then makes me feel a few things, two things at the same time. One of them is like totally insignificant in the grand scheme of what's out there, and the technologies you described, the way you described them, in part makes me feel quite insignificant. So I'm just this tiny little grain of sand in this never-ending beach, and I really don't matter in the grand scheme of this. And then the second thing, which is a positive consequence of that feeling, is kind of alleviates your anxiety, I guess. Like nothing really matters, nothing to worry about.
Very insightful. Can I ask you a favor? You have a line that in front of you. Where's we know Jesus, I want you to tell me what you see.
Okay, like that.
Do you know what that is? Take a look at that. Pull it up.
CXT detected.
Zoom in. What do you see?
Tiny dot of light. This is massive. I mean, it looks like a nice sky almost. And this is tiny dot of light.
You know what that is?
What is that?
That's the pathetic. That's Earth.
Oh, that's it.
Every memory, every piece of history occurred on that tiny, little, insignificant ball, hurling through the vastness of maximum space, and that ray of light is actually the sun. And that was taken by one of our probes, and it was heading out towards the solar system, and it was major activity picture. That's our home. How does that picture make you feel?
Totally insignificant. Irrelevant. Like, I just don't matter.
Yeah, how about this? Yes, it'll make you feel insignificant. It'll make you realize just how special you are. That God, the little engine that could, that's where we live, that's our home. And that is real, and that is special. So, to answer your question, how does it make you feel? You can feel insignificant and still feel special at the same time. And that's why I wanted you to see that picture. Because you're a little stronger than me. question asked. And so in order to rather than give you an answer, I wanted to experience that answer and ask my answer.
What do your kids think of you
Bitch.
I don't know. My children have just accomplishment in my life. Nothing in my life that will ever come close to achieving a father. Period. Full stop. So there's nothing I will ever do that will come close to that.
Yes.
What I do is else in life, because that's the most important. Now, what do they think about what I do? You probably have to ask them. Do they believe in UAP? They believe in data. I never told them to believe in UAP.
But do they believe that we are alone in the universe?
That's a different question. Well, you have to ask them that, but I mean, let's break that down again, because it's important. We love going to the binary thinking. Does life exist in the universe? Yes. This is living proof. This planet. In fact, life is abundant. Life is everywhere on this planet. Even the place something that never possible exists is there and it thrives.
Yes.
My daughters are very good, but they're also independent leaders. I taught them, don't be like mom and dad. If you don't want to be like mom and dad, do something stupid, don't do it. You learn a lesson. So we never prescribe our children what to think. Never. It's been up to them. They are incredibly intelligent. They both have very successful careers. And they think on their own. What they think is said. And I don't think that voice to mom. I'm asking you to believe that.
Do you believe we're alone in the universe?
You're absolutely not.
The other life is kind, I guess.
See, but there we go again. Me too, but what is cunning?
Let's just hope they don't hurt us.
That's different. Right.
Let's hope they don't eradicate us.
Right. Let's hope they're not malevolent. I would agree with that. Let's hope they're not, here for their own interests and not ours.
Mission terminated.
What did you call
All squads repeat.
Does not tolerate failure.
There, when you get to the first actual words, before the forward, this is what you say.
If you may be wondering why I'm typing this document, the word itself sometimes is associated with another word, threat. Although at first glance it may appear that this book focuses on the potential threat of unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP or UFOs in the vernacular. That is not my intent. According to some of the common definitions of the word imminent, it usually means something is about to happen, or impending, or inevitable. This is precisely why I chose this title. The invasion is an imminent. That's kind of what I'm trying to check.
I know. But that's not my intent.
We have a closing tradition on this podcast where the last guest leaves